Stephanie. It's good to be with you again.
Always wonderful to be with you, Spring.
Yeah. So today we want to talk about this pattern that often arise in the realm of social justice or cultural sensitivity. Is that of course, there's the dynamic of oppression, and oppression happens along many lines, like race and gender and social economic class, ableism, disableism. There are many ways that oppression can happen. Often when a hurt happens, and there will be a party that feel hurt and a party that often don't even realize that they've done something or said something that's hurtful, or ignore or refuse to admit the hurt. One very natural and common pattern that occurs is there's a tendency to shame and blame the perpetrator. So, and because of both of our background in medicine, we've talked about that this is important to distinguish make a distinction between the perpetrator and the victim, so that we stop the bleeding, we stop the hurting from happening. So in a way that blame and shame has a role to play but stop the oppression. But we're also talking about just stop bleeding is a first step in healing. There's another step is to heal, for the system to find its unity, its harmony again, and that requires something else. So can you chime in with what I said?
Yes, so the wound has happened. That cannot be denied. And the wound is bleeding out. So the coagulant of shame and blame is a temporary amelioration of that bleeding out. It stops the bleeding out, which ultimately will lead to death.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But then there is, as you just said, another step.
Mm-hmm.
The shame and blame, the coagulation, is not sufficient to truly heal the wound.
Yes.
And in order to truly heal the wound, holistic healing is necessary.
Yes. Yeah. So we're really both of us are healers, but also we're interested in social healing. So we're applying the medicine into social healing. So the shame and blame and pointing who's the perpetrator, who's the victim, that's kind of the first aid emergency medicine, which is what Western medicine is good at. But to heal the system in long term, that's kind of the forte of holistic medicine. So I want to share share a story, something that I have tried, and I know you have some stories. Actually, why don't you start first? Because I think the story is.
Oh, I want to hear your stories.
All right. So this story happens. The story happened when I was in the middle of there's actually a quite violent bloodshed between Chinese and the Tibetans. This has happened about more than a decade ago, and I think this happened in China. There's a longstanding suppression of the Tibetan people and their religious rights, and for very complex, historical reasons, which I think is actually it's an extension of the colonization. I call it the colonization chain. When China is caught into this being colonized, they turn to a colonizer, to the next link on the chain, so when that happened, I was in Seattle as a member from the oppressing kind of party. I felt a lot of I felt a lot of guilt towards the Tibetans, and then but at the same time, I was very much connected with Tibetan community, and I felt a lot of support from them. So eventually what happened is that with support from many people, we created a project called Seattle Listens, and we trained people to do compassionate listening, to hear the Tibetan story, as well as to hear the Chinese story, because the perpetrator has their side of the story too. It's actually my belief behind every perpetration, there's another trauma that's being disguised or covered or unhealed. So the healing needs to happen in both sides. So eventually we're able to bring the Chinese and Tibetans together in one room. I mean, these are the people who are fighting with each other in on the other side of the globe. So that's kind of the healing that I'm talking about. That's beyond pinpoint or pinning one group down as the perpetrator or victim. So to recreate unity on a different level. Yeah.
This is really the topic of embodied cultural sensitivity. How do we authentically come to the place where you can create something like what you created in Seattle? Genuinely, somatically. And yes, I have stories like that, but I want to save them for later because I really want people to sit with the story that you have just shared and recognize the magnitude of healing that you embodied in order to create that program in Seattle. That's where we're headed, and that's what the world needs. And that's the innovative approach of embodied cultural sensitivity.
Yeah, I also want to say that I would not be able to create that program if I was not supported by my Tibetan friends and the kings. And this is the thing is that the Tibetan and Chinese, they used to be really connected and kind of like, the Jews and the Palestinians, they were brothers from thousands of years ago. And to acknowledge and honor that original unity, and then grieve for the separation, the trauma, and then move beyond that to find the unity again.
That we need to believe in this. And of course, it's quite painful.
Yeah. Yeah.
At this moment because of the horrors occurring now. So we need to have the skills. It's not just a dream or a prayer.
Yeah.
We need the skills
Totally. Yeah.
to make this possible. That's what we're building in embodied cultural sensitivity. May it be so.
Yeah, maybe so.
Yeah.